Hey, friend. So, what are the most important things that we can be thinking about and doing on a day like today? And what are the mistakes that we make as parents and or advocates of individuals with autism and special needs? That is what I am going to talk about very shortly today. Thank you so much for joining me. Today in the United States of America is what we call Election Day. Happens every 4 years. You know all about it. Today, I wanted to come and talk about the fact that advocacy means using our voice. What are some of the mistakes that we end up making? I'll tell you in just a minute some of the mistakes I made when my son, was very young in terms of advocacy and using my voice. But first, Election Day. So, I went to school and pursued a degree in broadcast media. And let me tell you, that was a long, long time ago. Things have changed so dramatically. When I think about the things that we learned in First Amendment law, the law classes I had to take as it pertains to the First Amendment, I'm blown away at how things have dramatically changed in the 30 something years since that took place, since I was in school learning all the things about journalism and broadcasting and media. We have a God given right to speak our truth, to say what we believe, to give our opinion, and to share our stories. Would you believe that on this very platform right here, my story was taken down 2 times and I couldn't figure out why. And I kept looking at this whole community standard thing and where have I gone wrong? And as I went back and listened to that specific podcast, it was the fact that I was talking about research and what people are theorizing in terms of why they believe the autism rates have skyrocketed so dramatically in the last 25 years. It had to do with a specific schedule given by a specific government entity for medical interventions. And I had discussed that people are talking about this, and it's just one of the many things that people are talking about as it relates to why people are believing that rates have increased to 1 in 36 cases annually in the United States of America. So, what's my point? Being able to say what you believe is imperative. It's not some government that gives us the right to do that. It is our God given right. We were born with that right. It is an inalienable right to be able to speak what we believe and share what we believe and tell. Getting a little excited, I'm banging on my table. Share our stories in a way that is truthful and authentic. And if it makes a connection or can help somebody else, perfect, great. But the governments are supposed to protect my right to tell my story. They're supposed to protect your right to tell your story. Is that happening right now? Not for me. Not for me. So I would just encourage you on a day like today when people are going out and voting, or maybe they voted well in advance, which is something that my family did, that you would consider all things that are truly important to you, including your ability to tell your own story. If there is any one or any entity, no matter what, I don't care what they're called, any corporate entity, and governments, they make money. If they're trying to stifle you and your advocacy or your right to tell your story, that would be a red flag. I would just really, you know, caution you that you have to be able to tell your story. You have to be able to share what you know, especially if it's from experience. My story came with experience. It came with testing out the various medical interventions that we did for my son and how they affected him and how they possibly inadvertently affected him based on the research that we actually collected in laboratories. So, okay. Now, what are the mistakes I made as an advocate for my loved one? It's called the white coat syndrome. The white coat syndrome looks like this. Somebody in a white coat comes in and tells you something that is going to alter your life in an extremely dramatic way. And they are the expert because they're wearing a white coat. Now, I get it. The white coat comes along with years of education and degrees and credentials. I completely respect and honor that, and I understand that. However, there are certain things that nobody in a white coat can tell me or can tell you about your loved one or your son or daughter or the person that you care for. They can't tell you those things, and they don't know those things. They know what they've learned in the areas that they've been educated in. But you know what? There are so many specialties these days anymore that um, it's hard to actually have one person that has an expertise in all of the things that go into a diagnosis of autism. It's just not even possible anymore because people are considering biomedical situations. They're considering environmental situations. They're considering genetic situations. There are all of these things to consider. No one person is going down the deep dark tunnels of all of those things all at one time. It's just not feasible or possible or even realistic. So it is good to hear from multiple people. I made the mistake of listening to a few people in white coats very early on when my children were very young, as it relates to the kind of care and healthcare and medical interventions that I was going to advocate for them or that I was going to allow for them. I regret it. I regret it. I regret not being more vocal. I regret not asking more questions. I regret not challenging some of the comments that came back to me from people who were completely inexperienced, who had no expertise whatsoever in uh, cognitive disabilities or developmental delays. None whatsoever. They just had a white coat on. They knew some things about medical situations, but they didn't know about the neurology or the components that make up a diagnosis of autism. And I listened to them because I was a very young mom and I just thought I was dumb and they were smart and they're the one with the white coat. And we fall into this all the time. So my encouragement and my invitation to you is this: advocate, advocate, advocate on behalf of your loved one that does not have the means to advocate for themselves. You are their voice. You are their means to living out their full potential. You will assist them in the ways that you know in your heart and in your mind, through the research you have done, through the studies you have done, through the years of time you have spent on this journey. Trust yourself, ask the right questions, never leave an appointment or a doctor's appointment or a medical appointment, never leave unsatisfied. Never leave there with a question unanswered unless that professional can help you find the answer. You've got this. You have been chosen for this journey for a very special reason. I don't know you yet, but I'm very excited to get to know you. And I presume that as we communicate in the chat and in the comments, we'll get to know each other better that way. But there's a reason that you have been chosen to be on this journey with your loved one. It takes a lot of perseverance. It takes patience. It takes compassion. It takes an extra method, like an extra measure of something that I think a lot of other people just don't understand. And so I encourage you to be empowered and advocate for your loved one. Nobody will advocate for them like you do. Nobody loves them the way you do. Nobody knows them the way you do. You are their hero. Much love to you. Can't wait to see you in the next video.